I've been cutting a lot of cardboard lately, and I mean a lot of cardboard. You might be wondering, have I just been visiting Amazon a lot, or have I officially lost my marble? The answer is no and maybe, because recently I've started doing a bunch of cut tests in my regular knife reviews. But also, I recently got into EDC utility razors, and I found myself wondering, can a $10 Amazon Basics utility razor perform just as good as a premium level titanium EDC folding razor from a company like New Knives? Today, we are comparing not only these two, but also two other popular EDC utility knives, and we're going to find out. Let's go.
This is Sparta!
Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in. And if you've been here before, smash the like button on the way in. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And today we've got a comparison video for you. It's not a regular review. First of all, I bought all of these knives with my own money to bring you a fair and honest review with no sponsors. These were not sent in for review. I purchased these. So if you would be so kind and hit the subscribe button if you watch this video and you find it entertaining or you find it useful or educational, that would help me out a lot and would also encourage me to continue making more content like this. I want to mention why. Why am I doing this? This is a utility knife comparison, but specifically it's an EDC utility knife comparison, and it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. You see, it all started when I picked up this guy. This is the Riot Xou, the gravity utility knife from Riot, and it's a really fun, crazy knife. When I did my video on it, not only was it popular, but I also got a lot of opinions and a ton of people saying, well, why don't you try out this knife or this knife or this knife? And it really got me thinking, what makes for a really good EDC utility folder? And so I went down the rabbit hole and I ended up buying not one, but 4 different EDC utility razors. And guys, I have learned a lot in this journey, and I'm here to share with you today the difference between a $10 Amazon Basics utility folder and something like this New Knives U23 with titanium that costs $112. And by the way, just so you know, I will also be including cut test footage in this video, so feel free to stick around for that. Let's start off by talking about this guy. This is the $10 Amazon Basics utility razor, and I will make sure to link to this in the description down below. If you decide that you want to pick up any of these, they're all available, and some of those links are affiliate links, so if you use them, it does of course help out the channel. To be 100% accurate, I don't even think that this costs $10. I think at the time of recording this video, it's somewhere around the $8 to $9 mark. And what do you get for your $8 to $9 hard-earned dollars? Well, you get a cheap aluminum chassis, and I say cheap because it doesn't necessarily feel quality. It could just be the ano job, I guess we can call that an ano, on the handle scales themselves, but it does have some things going for it. And the first thing is the ease of blade change. You just press this button here at the top and the blade comes out, and you can actually adjust it so that it locks into the first notch or the second notch depending upon how much blade you need. As far as how easy is it to deploy, it is a button lock, but it's not like a regular button lock where you can just flick it out willy-nilly. No, it stays locked until you press this button, and then you can of course slow roll it out one-handed. It's not the easiest to utilize one-handed. I would say most people are probably just going to use 2 hands. On the positive side of things, you actually get a really decent amount of leverage on this knife because all of the weight and all the pressure of your wrist goes into the handle and allows you to put a driving force into the tip of this blade, which is to say that you've got plenty of leverage to go through things like cardboard, or if you want to do a precision cut through carpet or something of that nature, this will definitely get the job done. But for $8, there had to be some negatives, right? And the negative that I'm going to really slam on here is going to be the wiggle and jiggle of the blade itself. While it's not coming out and the blade is not going anywhere, it does wiggle and jiggle. And the issue that I have with that is that when you go to flip it to the other side to get more cutting edge, there's a very strong chance that this part is going to be dull because it wiggles and jiggles inside the blade holder. All in all, for $8, I think that it's a solid option for someone that wants to go super budget. If you leave this at the job site or you forget it in somebody's car, you're not going to cry too many tears before you pull out another $8 and go on Amazon to replace it. Next up, we've got a knife that I really like. I really enjoy this one. This is the Riot Xou, but some people reported some issues. And when I initially got this, I really liked it. It was super fidgety. I enjoyed the move to this type of locking switch. It's a gravity knife and it's super easy to deploy one-handed, to close one-handed, lock it up, lock it out. And by the way, it fits in the fifth pocket of your jeans and it doesn't have an overly massive footprint, unlike the Amazon Basics. It has a deep carry clip, which means that it's going to go in and out of the pocket without issue, and it's not going to have any issue going over thick material like Carhartt's or jean fabric. Something that I'm a big fan of is the grip in the hand. I can fist this, I can ham this, and I get a decent amount of cutting leverage out of this knife when I'm going through cardboard. But now we need to talk about why some people had some issues, because when I did my review of this, there were people that were reporting that the blade would just pull out of the holder at random if you put too much force on it. But for the life of me, I couldn't get it to happen. I'm trying right now and I can't get that blade to pop out of the holder. So what happened? Well, I didn't understand this at the start, but because you press down on this titanium spring right here to release the blade, that also happens to be the spot where most people are going to be putting their thumb to get a precision cut or to get some extra leverage behind the blade. Now, consequently, that's also how you release the blade, as I just showed. So I can totally see how someone might be trying to do a cut, put their finger on there for some support, and the blade just pulls straight out. That could in fact be dangerous. So in case you own one of these and you had that experience, definitely make sure of two things. Make sure, for one, that the spring is locked up against this frame, and for two, that you're not putting pressure on the spine of that blade holder, because if you do, you're in for a bad time at the minimum. Now, is that a design flaw? I don't know, maybe. You could possibly chalk that up to user error, but given the use case scenario for knives like this, it's completely plausible that someone would want to put their finger on the back of this blade to get a precision cut, to get some extra leverage, especially in draw cuts. So it's kind of one of those things where I could take it, I could leave it. Just make sure that if you're using this knife, you're not putting any pressure on the spine of that holder, because again, it will not work out well for you. Next up is quite possibly the most innovative design on the table. This is the Canadian-made Peachy G9, and if you have Instagram, chances are you've already seen an advertisement for this. By the way, if you have Instagram and you're not following me there, please make sure to do so at Rollshambo.edc, and you can also see my daily uploads where I upload me fidgeting with knives on camera. But the Peachy G9 is really carry friendly. It is definitely the smallest out of all of these. It has the smallest footprint, even smaller than the Riot Xou, and definitely smaller than the new knives U23. It also features some premium materials with these stone-washed titanium milled handle scales, and it's also very fidgety because it is in fact a gravity knife. Actuation of this bad boy is nice and easy. Of course, it fits in the fifth pocket of your jeans, but what really makes this stand out is how it's put together and, of course, the locking mechanism. There are 3 different positions on this locking lever. This position right here allows you to open and close it at will. No muss, no fuss. That's going to be fine. But if you find yourself in a situation where you really want to make sure that it's locked out, putting it in this far back position is going to make sure that it either stays open or it stays closed. So that way, if you need to use it for something a bit more hardcore and you don't want to leave it to your hands to keep the knife closed, it will go ahead and stay closed on its own. But now we got to talk about how to replace the blade. You might be thinking that this could be a little difficult, but check this out. If you put it into the middle position, it will scissor all the way open. And when it does, you can take out the sled that this blade rides on. So check it out. While the lockup on this blade is not necessarily perfect, you can jiggle it up and down, you do not have to worry about the blade getting dulled, because the only thing that's wiggling and jiggling in there is this magnetic sled that's sliding along the inside of that track. The sled itself is also titanium, and it holds the blade in on that sled via magnets, so you can switch it around and switch it out. This is definitely the most innovative design on the table. But because we're being extremely objective here, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about the negatives. The first negative is going to be that you get the least amount of cutting edge out of this blade. I would say that you'd be lucky to call that an inch, depending upon who's measuring, but hey, it is what it is. It's not going to be the greatest for larger cutting tasks. The next is going to be in the locked up position. It still jiggles part of the handle, so you can actually still jiggle that part of the handle. It doesn't completely lock it out, just enough to keep that blade from sliding back in or sliding back out. And honestly, I do wish that they had kind of locked that completely so that when it's in that final locking position, you couldn't even jiggle the handles. That would be a preference. But other than those two things, I think that this is definitely the most premium and the most innovative of all the designs, and I find myself carrying it every single day. This one's going to be coming in right under $90. Keep in mind, this will ship from Canada, which means that shipping is extremely slow. And lastly, we've got the most expensive utility razor knife on the table. This is the New Knives U23, and you might be looking at this saying, hey, that kind of looks similar to the Civivi Utility Elementum. Newsflash, this actually was released months and months before the Utility Elementum, so if you're looking at this wondering if this is in fact a ripoff, it's not. But this is also the most knife-like utility razor on the table today, and it's got some nice benefits, and we'll start there. The first benefit is that we have a dual locking mechanism. We've got a little screw that goes into the utility razor hole right there, and then we also have this locking wheel. Another benefit is that you get the most cutting edge out of this, which means that you have the most cutting leverage out of all of these knives here on the table. It's also extremely fidgety. The action is rather good, and the detent is also well tuned. You can use the thumb studs. You can also use this front flipper. All of them work exceptionally well. Full disclosure, this is the most premium version of this model that has the titanium handle scales. You can, of course, get this for somewhere around the $50 range if you're okay with G10 and or micarta. But if you, like me, are a sucker for titanium, there is only one option, and that is the titanium version. And I gotta say, the titanium feels really good in hand. The ergos are rather nice. We do get a little bit of jimping from the front flipper here, and there's not going to be any issue if you put any pressure on the spine of that blade holder. Another benefit is that if you need a utility razor and just want a little bit more cutting edge, it's nice because you can just replace the razor blade whenever you dull this one. This is going to be an exceptional option for someone that really wants a knife but wants the cutting geometry of a razor and isn't afraid to go out and buy some replacement blades from New Knives. But now comes the part where we talk about the negatives, and yes, there are some negatives on this knife as well. The first is going to be the replacement blades. So check it out. This takes a special replacement blade because of the fact that we have two locking points. While the two locking points do give us extreme stability and there's absolutely no wiggle or jiggle in that blade, the problem is that if you were to take this to the job site and you're someone that goes through a lot of utility blades, you have to actually use a driver to get off that screw before removing this wheel. So blade changeouts are not actually going to be that quick, just because you have an extra locking point, which requires you to actually use a whole nother tool to take it apart, unlike with the other three options on the table. The next downside is going to be these thumb studs. If you're going to treat it like an EDC knife, we have to look at it like we would an EDC knife. These thumb studs are thick and they really do need some extra texturing to be completely comfortable. I have found myself slipping off of that thumb stud in my use case scenarios for this knife, and so that is a little bit of a bummer. And then lastly, this locking wheel right here does tend to loosen itself as time goes by as you use the knife. So if you're someone that fidgets with your knife a lot like me, at the end of the day, you do have to continually check to make sure that this locking wheel is staying tight. Otherwise, it could fall off completely. So you might be wondering, well, what if you were to just remove that screw and then just lock it from that one spot and use a regular utility blade replacement like one of these guys? You could 100% do that and forego this secondary locking mechanism altogether. Just know that if you do that, it will have about the same amount of blade play as your Amazon Basics utility cutter. Now, if that's something that's acceptable to you, totally fine. However, if you're like me and you want the best lockout on this utility blade possible, that does mean that you have to buy all your replacement blades from New Knives. The good news is that they do carry them in stock and they're not exceptionally expensive either. So at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and put up all 4 cut tests at the same time and give you the opportunity to see for yourself how well these performed comparatively against each other going through the same kind of cardboard. But I'm curious, are you shocked at what you saw in the cut test, or is it pretty much as you expected? And are you one of those Milwaukee Fastback fanboys who have already typed in the comments section down below how you will never ever give up your $20 Milwaukee Fastback? But to spice things up, I went ahead and did a 5th cut test with my beloved TPK Edition QSP Hedgehog. This knife is quite possibly my favorite utility cutter in my entire collection, and it's going to cost you $150, but check out how quickly and smoothly it makes easy work of that cardboard. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. If you're looking for an exceptional box cutter utility blade, look no further than the TPK Hedgehog, because that cutting geometry cannot be denied, and it's one of those knives that's going to hold an edge for an extremely long time, not only because it's M390, but also because it has the best cutting geometry known to mankind. And while this one might be expensive, you can actually pick one of these up on the cheap as well if you go with a micarta version for somewhere in the realm of about 50 bucks. All jokes and comparisons aside, I'm really curious to see if you were surprised by anything. By far, if I had to pick one of these to live with for the rest of my life, I would definitely go with the Canadian-made Peachy G9. I absolutely love the innovation that went into this. I love the fact that it's very carry-friendly, and I also love the fact that you could put this in your 5th pocket while carrying a big, overbuilt, massive knife that you don't really want to use when it comes to those small utility cutting tasks. Because while it might have the least amount of cutting edge, it is definitely the most carry friendly, and at the same time you can put it in your 5th pocket and carry something much bigger if that's what you really desire. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Are you planning on picking up one of these 4 knives? If not, why not? Let me know. And by the way, if you've watched this far and you haven't done so yet, make sure to smash that subscribe button. By the way, if you want to watch more awesome knife and EDC content, go ahead and click on one of the videos that pops up next.